Everybody knows that Roberto Aguayo struggled mightily for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a rookie in 2016. So there was going to be some heat, some pressure on him in 2017 to step up and deliver, or else his job could potentially be on the line. And we found out very quickly in the 2017 preseason just how true that sentiment was. And while I wasn't surprised that the Buccaneers were maybe entertaining the thought of releasing him, especially after the first preseason game the Bucs had where he struggled yet again, missed an extra point, missed a field goal, I believe, I was still surprised that ultimately the Bucs cut Roberto Aguayo one game into the preseason. As you're talking about a kid last year, they traded up with the third and fourth round pick to get into the tail end portion of round two to draft a kicker. In this case, an incredibly successful kicker from Florida State in Aguayo. And after one season and one preseason game, they've cut ties with him. Now, maybe there's more to the story. Maybe they just feel like he's not going to pull it together. Maybe they feel like his confidence is too shot. Maybe they felt like it was too much pressure on him and he wasn't going to overcome. Maybe they didn't like his work ethic. Maybe they thought they had somebody else in camp that was better equipped for the job. I don't really know. But I did see plenty of people on Twitter from NFL media sitting there and praising the Buccaneers for, wow, they made the mistake of drafting him. They made the decision very quickly to cut their losses and move the hell on. To which I say, balderdash. It still doesn't absolve you of drafting the kicker in round two, giving up a third and fourth round pick to move up into the tail end portion of the round two, and then slightly after 1 year later, you're already releasing the guy. That is a bust no matter how much you want to spin it. Period. So even though the general manager for the Bucs, Jason Licht, has done some good things, this was not one of them, and we should not be excusing it or trying to justify it or minimize it by saying, well, at least they made the decision and they got rid of him quickly. No, they still made the pick. The pick busted out, and that's the way it is. It was just a bad decision. And moving on from it quickly is not necessarily a great thing either, because they could have potentially moved on too quickly. I think back to Sebastian Janikowski, who Al Davis and the Raiders, way back when, over a decade and a half ago, spent a first-round pick on him coming out of Florida State, and he was worse than Aguayo as a rookie. Like, I believe Aguayo's field goal percentage was a little over 71% made in 2016 as a rookie. Sebastian Janikowski, if memory serves me correctly, way back in the day, his rookie year, his field goal made percentage was 69%. And there was a point in time where the Raiders were getting frustrated with him and wondering if he actually had what it took. And they stuck with him. And all these years later, guess what? Al Davis is dead and Sebastian Janikowski is still kicking for the Oakland Raiders. So there is a thought here that while the Bucs acted quickly and cut their losses, maybe they were too quick to cut their losses, because ultimately you invested a second round pick in the dude and gave up two other picks in the process to go get him. That's a lot of draft currency to move up to get a kicker. Maybe you should have given him more than 1 year to kind of piece together and figure it out. It's just a thought. And now there's no guarantee that Aguayo's going to figure it out. He could just be an epic bust and failure and that's it. But what if he does figure it out? Imagine how stupid the Bucs are going to be looking if Aguayo sits there and ends up being an NFL kicker for 10 or 15 years for another team when they could have just kept him and helped him work out his issues and figure it out. Because it's almost like the dude forgot how to kick all of a sudden one day. Maybe it's a reflection of the special teams coaching in Tampa Bay that you couldn't right the ship with him and you couldn't make it better. Because I don't see how he goes from Florida State, where he's an incredibly accurate kicker inside of 50 yards, to all of a sudden now he couldn't make anything from anywhere, it felt like at times. And then that brings in the Chicago Bears, who have claimed him off of waivers. To which I say, why the hell not? Because you look at Aguayo, he was a second-round pick, and granted at the time, I thought in that draft he was going to go second round, if you remember, maybe early to mid-third round at the very latest. And I didn't have that huge of an issue with the selection, and here's why. Because as much as people want to talk crap about Janikowski being taken in the first round by Al Davis all those years ago and he was insane, Janikowski is still in the league. So Janikowski didn't bust out. And I guarantee you, when you would redraft that draft, you would still end up taking him in round number 1. I think back in the day, way back in the day, before most of us were even alive, and the Raiders took a guy named Ray Guy, a punter who had a broken foot coming out of college, mind you, and he went on to be an organization changer for that team. He changed field position. He did so many things for them as a punter. He now has a bust in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. If you thought a punter was going to be Ray Guy, would you take him in the first round? Absolutely, especially if you were a team that thought that that was a guy that could get you over the hump. If you had a chance sitting there in the middle of the first round to get a guy like Janikowski, knowing that he could potentially be your kicker for 15 to 20 years, would you take him? Maybe, because even some guys that might be better on the board, you feel at other positions aren't going to last as long or have as much long-lasting impact in the league. So I resent this whole notion that kickers shouldn't be taken high. That's a ridiculous thought process to me. Like, I look back at Jason Hansen for the Detroit Lions. He kicked in the league for 2 decades. Looking back, would you take a Jason Hansen with a second-round pick? Absolutely, and if you wouldn't, you're a clown. And don't give me the crap of, well, you could find guys like the Bears did with Robbie Gould, undrafted guys to come in. Absolutely, but you can do that with so many other positions too. Should you not draft a defensive tackle in round 1 because you can get John Randall in the undrafted ranks? I'm just saying. Should you not draft a quarterback number 1 overall because a guy like Tom Brady can slip through the cracks and be the 199th pick in the 2000 draft? Not necessarily. You can find those guys all throughout. But if the talent is there, you take them. And again, I understand the logic of, as important as the kicking game is, especially with the lengthening of the extra point now and how much that extra point is at a premium, if anything, Aguayo busting out potentially hurts kickers being taken higher, but long term there's going to be a greater importance, a greater premium on those kickers being able to connect on those extra points. You're going to see more of them taken in day 2 of the draft, and potentially some of them start being taken in day 1 if they have enough leg. And there's not an issue with that, especially if they work out and they're your kicker for 10, 15, 20 years. I'm just saying. Like, when I look back at the grand scheme of things, the Chicago Bears in 2005, when you talk about getting Robbie Gould as an undrafted free agent, imagine if he's in that same draft class and the Bears drafted Cedric Benson at number, well, they did draft Cedric Benson at number 4. Imagine if they would have drafted Robbie Gould at number 4. You say, I'm crazy and everything else, but which draft pick would look much better in history's eyes in the grand scheme of things? It would be the kicker. So with all that context here, the Chicago Bears are taking a flyer on a guy that clearly has some confidence issues, some type of technique issues, but was an incredibly accurate kicker in college. They don't have the pressure of him coming in and being their second-round pick. He's somebody else's failed second-round pick. So you claim him off of waivers, maybe you bring him in, and maybe it works out, and maybe, just maybe, you've capitalized on somebody else panicking and making too much of a reflex move too quickly, and you found your kicker for the next 10 to 15 years. That is possible. And if it doesn't, and he doesn't piece it together, then you've brought him in and it was no risk. You can quickly move on from him because, again, you didn't trade up, giving up a 3rd and 4th round pick to move into the tail end portion of round 2 to draft this kicker at the end of round 2. That was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So for me, for the Chicago Bears, General Manager Ryan Pace, I applaud this decision because why the hell wouldn't you? If it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's great too. But either way, you've taken your swing. You've taken your chance. The only way you're going to find out if it's going to work for you or not, or pan out or not, is to go get the guy, bring him in, and try him out. So I'm curious to see if it does work out, if it does pan out, because there is that element of me that hopes he is that guy that can be that kicker for a long, long time to come. But if he's not, it's no sweat off of my balls, and it should be no sweat off of the Bears' balls, because they took a swing, they took a chance, and if they struck out, they're not really out anything at all other than a little bit of money. So I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, personally, my opinion, panicked here a little bit. Maybe they thought their team was a little bit better than they actually are. They just lost patience with Aguayo. Maybe there's more that we don't know, but I don't really think you should be in the business generally of giving up on a second-round pick, especially a guy you traded up to get in round number 2 1 year after drafting him. And my hope is that the Bucs' loss ends up being a big win for the Chicago Bears.